our paper, our proposed paper, our research is really on disappointment, because I'm an Norwich fan, Jack's a Walsall fan, so our lives are one big disappointment. And we're thinking about how wider cultural contexts have affected football fandom. So what we expect, what we get, what we want, what we look for in football has possibly changed. So we're going to have a brief discussion of like the wider culture, British culture particularly. Look at specific conditions within football for disappointment. What is it about football that creates this landscape for disappointment? Thinking about how we should be getting on with it, but instead we're just moving on, okay? And what our research is basically, as Alex, I'll just say it was like Alex, basically. So we're looking at all the sort of similar things that he is. And then feedback and questions, really. So
yeah, keep the questions just nice and easy for us, that'd be nice. Okay, so I mean, it centres kind of around a term, stickability, which we've basically just made up. Our interest in proposed research is around this, and whether fans now are less likely to endure the difficulties or inherently harsh and sometimes maybe unfair realities of football in today's society, or are fans still going to remain? Are they going to stick around and relentlessly support their team through times like that poor Norwich fans having there, and into obviously the lives of typical Saddlers fans like myself, where Darren Byfield scores a 25-yard drive at the start of this century to send a 10-year-old Jack into absolute delirium and Walsall into the Championship.
So, what we need to do for this, for our research, is we're going to look at football culture within a wider cultural landscape and think of how recent changes in the way that we imbibe cultural objects might be impacting on what we expect. And look at what our relationship with culture is, how we've moved from passive to active. I'm using your research as my ex-supervisor there, a PhD supervisor, so I'm quoting you as a kind of homage thing. So we've moved from passive to active to this kind of faux active, where we think we have control. So when we can vote for something, a lot of the culture today is about voting. I'm a celebrity, vote to get somebody evicted. X Factor, vote to save somebody. So we've got this sort of faux activity. And all these formats within culture give us this false sense of power, this false sense of control. But really, who are we voting for? I'm a celebrity, we're voting for 12 people that have already been picked. So the sort of cultural conditions of disappointment are set for us. I think you need to click. Oh God, we missed him.
You'll have to take it as Tinder.
There's a little Tinder bit in there, just in case anyone isn't on Tinder. Not that we're on Tinder, really.
No, move on.
Anyway, we're going to move. That was a picture of Jack on Tinder.
Let's move on.
So in case the cultural reference of our title, Swipe Left, was missed, basically with Tinder, with all my students, they're constantly like on their phones going, no, swiping away. So thinking about the sort of idea of what culture is, and really it's become fast and furious. A writer called James Blake, who I really like, wrote about speed, and this was back in 2000, and he was saying that we're in this kind of hurry-up culture. We want everything faster, we want everything quicker. We want to be excited and entertained and wowed. And I'll just think about what culture is, and really, we've got speed dating. You've got 10 minutes in order to, decide whether somebody's worth talking to or not. You get food services that promise you if they're not there in 20 minutes, you'll get your money back. Go onto Amazon, you buy something, you don't like it, you can take it back, okay, send it back. So we've got this culture at the moment where everything is replaceable, is send-backable, is get-riddable of. And I think they're all made-up words, obviously. And I think that with football, and with my students, when I talk to them about football, they're kind of going that way as well. So in a lecture the other day, I said to them, most of them are Stoke fans, because I'm based in Stoke, so again, they're all disappointed. I said, would you rather have watched a dull 0-0 draw between Stoke and Sunderland, or that Palace game, 5-4, Swansea? And 9 out of 10 of them said, no, we'd like to have watched the 5-4. Because that's what they want. They want a bit of excitement. They want a bit of entertainment. And I think that's what's worrying, is that if we're not entertained, if we don't get satisfied quickly enough, we swipe left, we get rid of it. So is this going to translate to football?
Okay, so that really sets us onto what, we've got the kind of wider cultural position, but then what about football-specific conditions for this disappointment. But you can't really start anywhere really without commercialisation, and obviously the effects of that are quite widespread, and we understand them. There's an incessant increase constantly of sponsorship advertising, and it's always in your face, and it just shows how football is ever expanding. It's always changing. More people want more power, and money really is the way to get it. So often where money is found, so too is greed and corruption, and we've seen quite a lot of that through FIFA, the Premier League, but also that corruption is potentially feeding down towards grassroots as well. And I think partly what might help us understand what our research is whether lower league fans as well are accepting of what's happening, or whether they want to move on. So obviously commercialisation has a big impact on us. The game's gone through dramatic commodification. It's mega business, and it's really here in England that we see that, you know, we're the prominent engine. Just last week, the sale of television rights to China broke another record, and it seems like every week there's some sort of record being broken in terms of money and the power that brings. Potentially more important for the present discussion is that the period has seen a widening of the gap between larger clubs and smaller ones, so that both in financial muscle and success. So it's completely altered the way that we view football, our footballing habitus, so to speak. We can either accept these changes that sometimes include incredible salaries for sometimes undeserving footballers that we might see as undeserving, that include smaller teams, yes, like Walsall, that have slimmer and slimmer chance of progressing through competitions or into the next league. So we can deal with that disappointment, or we can move on, and it's this final aspect that Alison and I are really interested in. So am I the battle-hardened Walsall fan that saw the Chris Hutchins and Paul Merson, I'll call it a regime, I'm not sure whether it is a regime or whether it was. Am I going to stick with it? Or am I not? Am I going to move on like my exasperated brother who's had enough and is completely disenchanted? Okay, advances. The transition in football has not been just down to commercial interest, but also much of the new and different ways that we consume football have served to drive the way that we consume it. We want things in moments, as Alison said. We want them in seconds, we want them now, we want them yesterday, and it is unrelenting. You can interact with fans across the world. It was really interesting to hear Alex and a couple of others today speak about how we interact with people across the world. You can get into an argument about a penalty with someone in Japan if you want to, if that's your discourse. But one might argue, though, really that this immediacy of access has served to disregard the more traditional notion of seeing things through, and that's something that's been customarily ingrained within football and British culture for so long that we feel perhaps is leaving us. That cool consumer who often uses that sort of technology is now mixing with that traditional fan, so-called traditional fan, and hauling them into that world. So it's those virtual spaces and places, to quote Turner, and media technology which are more akin to the cool flaneur or the cool consumer. They offer potential for the traditional fan to reinterpret and renegotiate where they're participating within football. So due to these considerations then, the complex nature of the relationship between key stakeholders in football has been exacerbated, particularly where money is involved. Managers are losing their jobs at a pace. 56 broke the record last season for 15-16. 11 of those are from the Premier League, and the tenure of those managers was 15 months. The second lowest on record since 1992. People want to move on. Okay, I'm just going to whiz through this. Traditions continue to slip then, and we really want to find out whether fan identity is under threat by this cool consumer. Hoggenstad believes that these supporters are embraced, those flaneur cool consumers are rather embraced by larger, bigger, more wealthy Premier League football teams, because they understand better than the lower league football teams about their importance in terms of wealth and success and what they can offer for them. Okay, go on, Alison.
Okay, so how are we going to do this, or what we're going to do is a two-pronged approach. We're going to firstly have questionnaires, online questionnaires, asking people what they, how they feel about their club, how they feel about the manager, and we're going to aim it at Walsall, Norwich and Villa, I think we chose. So teams that have been, from last season to this season, facing disappointment. So we want fans that are disappointed because we want to really get to the bottom of like why they're disappointed, who they blame, what they see the future is. And then we're also going to do a content analysis of message boards and look at the kind of language that's used. And one of our problems, I think, is going to be the fact that British people particularly like moaning. We moan a lot.
We're almost
it is 15 minutes. No, it says 10 minutes on there. You know, if I stay in a hotel and it's good, I don't go and TripAdvisor because I've forgotten because no one annoyed me. But if it's bad, you know, if there was a sort of, you know, anything that went wrong, I'll be straight on there bitching about it. So one of the problems we might find with message boards is that generally people do go on there to moan. And with Walsall, we found particularly that people love to moan. So our results may be a bit skewed, okay? But that's what we're going to do, a content analysis of message boards, look at the language used and see how this reflects the culture. You know, does it reflect the same as if a character jumps the shark in a TV series, if the writers of a TV series, if a band starts to produce music like Coldplay that you don't like, you know, are you going to leave your club in a way that you might not listen to that band anymore, might not watch the TV show anymore?
Right, okay, final slide, promise. So summary then, the amount of fans willing to stick with it, we think may be decreasing. The cultural conditions for those disappointment are exacerbated by those, and we think match up with those within football. Technology progresses alongside our desire really for the wow factor and to be entertained, and the traditional and the flaneur football fan interchange and they mix. Our research would centre around that disappointment, potentially around losses, poor form, and hypothetically how fans might feel if their situation changed. And just a last point from me, you know, we're in real danger of Walsall not getting promoted ever again. And if you want to see the tile choice stand, you want to see it on TV, not from the M6, which it towers over at the minute. So just bear that in mind. So any questions and anything, we'd love to hear from you.